Welcome to this explainer. If you love a good, deep, historical, and theological mystery, you are in the absolute right place today. We're going to be unraveling a massive biblical enigma, literally a theological detective story, all centering around this one mysterious figure named Melchizedek. So let's just jump right in. Look at the evidence, connect the dots, and see exactly how one kind of obscure ancient king fundamentally changes our entire understanding of the cosmos. Right off the bat, we're hit with this huge paradox. How does a man mentioned in only two brief Old Testament passages become the absolute key to the entire New Testament priesthood? Seriously, it's an incredibly slender textual base for just an astronomical amount of theological weight. Think about it for a second. This obscure character pops up in Genesis, totally vanishes, gets just one single shout out in a psalm, and yet somehow he becomes the very foundation for how the New Testament understands the ultimate kingship and priesthood. Wild, right? Okay, let's really dive into this and weigh this crazy contrast. On one hand, we've got his textual base, which is just Genesis 14 and Psalm 110. That's literally it. But then, look at the immense theological weight he carries. We're talking about a legitimate priesthood existing prior to Mount Sinai, the inauguration of a cosmic jubilee, and basically the entire Christological argument in the book of Hebrews. The contrast between his brief little cameos and his ultimate cosmic significance is, well, it's just staggering. Which brings us to Section 1, the enigma of Genesis 14, the king priest of Salem. So the linguistic breakdown of his name is actually super fascinating. Melchizedek is a theophoric compound. Melech simply means king, and Tzedek means righteousness. Now, in the ancient Canaanite context, Tzedek was actually a deity of righteousness. So culturally, this points to Melchizedek being a pre-Israelite Canaanite king priest in Salem, which, by the way, is early Jerusalem, serving God Most High. And what's really incredible here is how this Canaanite quality of righteousness, Tzedek, was later seamlessly absorbed right into the very character of Yahweh in Israelite religion. So Melchizedek isn't some weird alien. He is firmly rooted in his ancient Canaanite cultural milieu, yet legitimately serving the true God. Let's trace his textual journey chronologically so we can really see how this all flows together. First up, he appears in Genesis 14 and that patriarchal encounter with Abram. Centuries pass, and then, in step 2, he's suddenly reactivated in Psalm 110 during the Davidic dynasty. Fast forward to step 3, the Second Temple period, and documents like the Dead Sea Scrolls show this intense speculation about him being some sort of divine figure. Finally, step 4, he lands right in the book of Hebrews as a total masterclass in New Testament typology. So you see, he acts as this historical hinge for major sweeping theological developments across centuries. Moving right along to Section 2, reactivating the ancient priesthood. Now, this comparison is absolutely vital to understand. First, look at the Aaronic priesthood. It was restricted to the tribe of Levi, strictly separating kings from priests. But here's the crazy part. This was actually a temporary backup plan. Why? Because Moses showed unbelief at the burning bush. Who knew, right? In stark contrast, the Melchizedekian priesthood is a fused king-priest model that existed long before Sinai, and it represents the eternal divine ideal. The Aaronic line was really just a parenthesis in history. The Melchizedekian template was always the superior substance from day one. And that brings us to this absolutely explosive verse from Psalm 110. The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. Just imagine how shocking this was to hear back then. Under the Mosaic law, kings could not be priests. Seriously, King Uzziah was literally struck with leprosy just for trying it. Yet here, Yahweh officially fuses the offices of king and priest for the coming Davidic king, reaching way back past Moses to that ancient template of Salem. Talk about a game changer. Okay, Section 3, Second Temple Divine Speculation. I like to call this the era of false leads. Ancient writers were basically trying to solve the mystery of the visible Yahweh or the second power in heaven. Some Dead Sea Scroll texts actually elevated Melchizedek to an angelic being. Was he the Archangel Michael? Well, no, because Michael is an angel delayed by other spirits in Daniel 10. Was he Job? Nope, totally different geography. What about Shem, the son of Noah? Now, this one is beautifully ironic. Identifying him as Shem was actually a later rabbinic polemic designed specifically to give Melchizedek a known genealogy. They were literally trying to shut down the Christian argument that we'll be looking at in just a minute. But here is the absolutely crucial point we have to remember. Melchizedek was a human king. He was not a divine being. The overarching theological rule that completely unravels all that Qumran speculation is the species uniqueness of Yahweh. Simply put, Yahweh is uncreated. He created the heavenly host, therefore no created being, not an angel, not a human patriarch, nobody, can ever be elevated to ontological equality with God. Melchizedek was a spectacular foreshadowing for sure, but at the end of the day, he was a mortal man. Which leads us perfectly into section 4, the typology of Hebrews. I want to just pause for a second and read this famous, highly mysterious phrase straight from Hebrews 7. Without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life. Just let that sink in for a moment. For centuries, people read this and thought, aha, no way. He's an immortal alien or some sort of divine manifestation. But here is the grand aha moment. This isn't about Melchizedek being an immortal alien at all. It is entirely about his deliberate lack of genealogical qualification. See, in the Levitical system, you had to prove your genealogy to be a priest. But Genesis stays completely silent on Melchizedek's parents. The writer of Hebrews uses this silence brilliantly to prove that a legitimate priesthood doesn't require a tribal pedigree. And why does this matter so much? Because it completely legitimizes Jesus, who descends from the royal tribe of Judah, not the priestly tribe of Levi. It's kind of like a giant theological puzzle perfectly snapping into place. And this brilliantly illustrates the hierarchy at play here. Think back to when Abram met Melchizedek. Abram paid him a tithe. The rule here is simple. The lesser is blessed by the greater. Because Levi, the future father of the Jewish priests, was theoretically in the loins of his ancestor Abram, Levi essentially paid a tithe to Melchizedek too. This proves by pure typological logic that the Melchizedekian priesthood is constitutionally superior to the Aaronic line. Now, you gotta pay close attention to the specific phrasing here. Melchizedek doesn't resemble Jesus. According to the text, Melchizedek was made to resemble the Son of God. Notice that? That divine passive verb is there to protect the absolute uniqueness of Christ. The pattern follows the substance, not the other way around. Melchizedek was historically orchestrated by God specifically to prefigure the coming king-priest. All right, let's move to the climax in section 5, Christ's cosmic jubilee. So when did this eternal priesthood actually begin historically? Let's walk through the chronological steps. First, it was validated through the Messiah's perfect obedience and suffering in his humanity. Second, it was inaugurated publicly at the Nazareth proclamation in Luke 4, where Jesus read from Isaiah and literally declared the Jubilee, the release of captives. And third, the whole shebang was finalized when he passed through the heavens at the ascension, taking his rightful seat at the throne of grace. What exactly did this Jubilee accomplish, though? Well, this is a Christus Victor liberation. This priesthood is an eschatological rescue mission. Yes, it's about canceling debts, but it goes so much deeper than that. It's about defeating the rebellious spiritual powers that have literally ruled the nations since the Tower of Babel. It's about reclaiming disinherited humanity from structural captivity. To put it in perspective, this isn't just about paying off a forensic legal debt. It is literal cosmic warfare, and the king-priest has definitively won. So, how do we actually fit into this giant cosmic rescue mission? Well, the required response is believing loyalty, translated from the Greek word pistis. This is an ongoing, enduring covenantal allegiance to the messianic king-priest. It is so much more than just nodding your head and intellectually agreeing to a list of facts. It means staying utterly loyal to the king-priest who liberated you, and by doing so, joining his real priesthood yourself. Which brings us to the most important question of all today. If the cosmic king-priest has already reclaimed the nations and inaugurated the ultimate jubilee, what does your believing loyalty look like today? Really think about that. How are you living out your allegiance to the one who holds the eternal priesthood? Well, I really hope this explainer has illuminated the grand mystery of Melchizedek for you and left you eager to dig even deeper into these incredible ancient texts. Keep exploring, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.